In 2018, politicians broke ground on a massive high-tech paradise in rural Wisconsin. They promised a $10 billion liquid crystal display factory, 13,000 high-paying manufacturing jobs, and an economic rebirth, billed as the eighth wonder of the world. State and local leaders handed over $4 billion in subsidies and bulldozed hundreds of acres of private homes. Today, if you drive through Mount Pleasant, you will not find thousands of assembly workers. You will find an empty glass sphere, miles of oversized roads, and a town saddled with massive debt. How did America's biggest corporate promise become its most embarrassing ghost town? Drop a comment right now. If a corporate giant promises 13,000 jobs, should a town spend money up front before a single brick is laid? Subscribe now, because the math on this deal gets stranger by the minute. Look at this structure. In 2018, Donald Trump, Governor Scott Walker, and Foxconn chairman Terry Gou stood on this exact dirt with golden shovels. They called it the eighth wonder of the world. They promised $10 billion in private investment, 13,000 high-tech manufacturing jobs, and the glorious return of American electronics production right to the Rust Belt. Today, the dirt is still mostly empty. The factory floor sits quiet. The assembly line jobs never arrived, and the taxpayers of this small town are left holding a bill for almost $1 billion. Someone convinced America that high-tech manufacturing was coming to a rural cornfield, and then left everyone else to pay for the setup. The numbers attached to this project were designed to paralyze critical thinking. $10 billion in total private investment, 13,000 direct manufacturing jobs, a physical footprint spanning over 1,400 acres. To secure those numbers, state and local officials put together a record-breaking $4.1 billion public incentive package. That meant taxpayers were on the hook for roughly $300,000 for every single promised job. To understand why a giant glass sphere stands largely empty in the middle of a quiet prairie today, you have to look closely at the contract signed in 2017. Buried inside the fine print was a financial trap that guaranteed local taxpayers would pay for the setup, even if the multi-billion-dollar Taiwanese tech giant packed up and went home. Back in 2017, the political dream actually made a strange kind of sense. The American Midwest had spent decades watching its manufacturing base get shipped overseas. Cities across the region were desperate for heavy industry, supply chain revival, and modern technology jobs. When Foxconn, the massive manufacturing contractor famous for assembling Apple iPhones in Asia, announced it was looking for a location to build its first major liquid crystal display panel facility in North America, states went to war over the opportunity. Wisconsin won that war by offering more money, more land, and fewer regulatory hurdles than anyone else was willing to match. The public promise was intoxicating. Foxconn was not just bringing a warehouse or an assembly plant. They were promising a Generation 10.5 LCD panel facility. A facility of that scale would manufacture massive sheets of display glass, processing them into high-definition television screens and industrial displays. Politicians envisioned an entire domestic supply chain forming around Racine County. Glass manufacturers, chemical suppliers, packaging plants, and logistics hubs would all flock to Wisconsin to serve the mothership. The regional economy was supposed to transform overnight into a Midwestern Silicon Valley. If you think $300,000 per promised job sounds like an impossible deal for taxpayers, hit the like button and tell me what your city could build with that kind of cash. To make room for this high-tech empire, state and local authorities acted with unprecedented speed. The state legislature passed special legislation to streamline approvals, cutting through environmental review processes that usually take years to resolve. Environmental regulations were rolled back. The state granted Foxconn the extraordinary right to pump up to 7 million gallons of water per day directly out of Lake Michigan to cool its manufacturing equipment, despite fierce resistance from regional environmental groups and neighboring states. Wetlands were filled, drainage patterns were rerouted, and massive retention ponds were carved out of the soil. Then came the physical land clearance. The local government needed over 1,400 contiguous acres to satisfy the footprint of the proposed megacampus. That land was not empty public dirt. It was a patchwork of generational family farms, suburban residences, and local small businesses. When some homeowners refused to sell their properties at offered rates, the local municipality stepped in with eminent domain. Officials declared the rural area blighted, a legal designation that allowed them to condemn private property and force long-time residents off their land in the name of economic development. Dozens of homes were leveled by bulldozers. Barns were knocked down, mature trees were ripped out, and quiet country roads were erased from the county map. In their place, Crews laid out massive 6-lane widened highways, installed high-capacity industrial sewer mains, built custom electrical substations, and dug deep utility trenches designed to service an industrial city. The local village took on hundreds of millions of dollars in fresh debt to finance these site preparations, firmly convinced that future tax revenues from the factory would easily cover the bond payments. Would you sell your house if the local government claimed it was for the public good, or would you fight it in court? Let me know in the comments below. While earth movers were turning family farms into crushed gravel, the fundamental reality of the product was already quietly unraveling behind closed doors. This brings us directly to the project's primary original sin, the absolute physical and economic impossibility of building a Generation 10.5 LCD panel factory in rural Wisconsin. A Gen 10.5 plant manufactures glass sheets that measure nearly 9 feet by 10 feet. This glass is extraordinarily thin, highly fragile, and practically impossible to ship long distances over standard interstate highways or rail networks without specialized, custom-built transport systems that did not exist in North America. To operate a Gen 10.5 plant profitably, you need a dense, hyper-localized ecosystem of specialized suppliers located within short driving distance. You need specialized glass substrate factories located right next door, specialized glass processing equipment, specialized chemical refiners, and a deep pool of highly trained cleanroom technicians. That entire industrial ecosystem existed in East Asia, built over decades with tens of billions in state-backed investments. 0% of that supply chain existed in Wisconsin. Expecting a full supply chain to materialize overnight in a Midwestern cornfield was not an aggressive business strategy. It was an economic fantasy. It did not take long for reality to collide with political rhetoric. Shortly after breaking ground with golden shovels alongside federal and state leaders, Foxconn quietly changed its plans. Executives stopped talking about a massive Gen 0.5 factory and began suggesting they would instead build a much smaller Generation 6 facility. A Gen 6 plant makes much smaller glass sheets, intended for smartphones, tablets, and vehicle dashboards, rather than massive 75-inch television screens. The problem was that a Gen 6 facility required only a fraction of the physical space, a fraction of the water, a fraction of the power, and a fraction of the workers. The massive 6-lane highways, the huge water mains, and the 1,400-acre land footprint were suddenly completely disproportionate to what the company was actually planning to build. The original justification for seizing homes, waiving environmental rules, and spending hundreds of millions on custom infrastructure had vanished into thin air. But the physical site had already been carved up. Subscribe right here if you love urban investigations, where a project shrinks by 90%, but the public bill stays exactly the same size. As the physical scope of the factory shrank, the corporate messaging became increasingly confusing. Over the next 2 years, Foxconn offered a rapid succession of conflicting vision statements for the Wisconsin campus. First, it was going to be a smaller Gen 6 display panel plant. Then, company representatives suggested it would be an advanced research and development hub instead of a heavy manufacturing facility. Later, they publicly mentioned producing high-tech coffee kiosks, robotic components, specialized medical devices, electric vehicle components, or serving as a generic contract assembly site for various tech clients. While the corporate narrative shifted with every passing quarter, the physical construction on the site yielded only a handful of actual structures. The most prominent was a 1 million square foot white industrial shell and a striking 100-foot tall glass sphere intended to serve as a high-tech network operations center. The futuristic glass dome stood out starkly against the flat Wisconsin horizon, a surreal symbol of high technology sitting in the middle of hundreds of acres of empty, bulldozed dirt and quiet retention ponds. This brings us directly to the midpoint reversal of this entire investigation. To understand how this project turned into a long-term trap, you have to separate state financial risk from local municipal risk. Most national news coverage focused on the state level, reporting that Wisconsin was losing billions. But the state government had actually protected itself with performance-backed tax credits. Under the state contract negotiated by the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, Foxconn could only claim state tax subsidies if it actually hit strict, verified targets for capital investment and direct job creation. When Foxconn failed to hit those statutory employment and construction benchmarks, the state held firm and refused to hand over the state-level tax credit checks. From the state treasury's perspective, the risk framework worked as intended. The state did not pay out billions for jobs that were never created. Stay right here, because this is where the story stops being a political promise and turns into a financial trap for one specific village. The real disaster was not taking place at the state level. It was concentrated entirely inside the small local municipality of Mount Pleasant and Racine County. To lure the development, the local village board created a massive tax increment financing district. Under this financing model, the village borrowed nearly $1 billion in public municipal debt to buy up private properties, demolish homes, pay off displaced landowners, lay miles of underground utilities, and pave heavy-duty roads. The financial logic of a tax increment financing district relies entirely on future property tax assessments. The village assumed that Foxconn would build billions of dollars worth of high-value industrial machinery, clean rooms, and advanced facilities inside the district. The property taxes collected on those massive, high-value assets were supposed to pay off the interest and principal on the municipal bonds over the coming decades. When Foxconn scaled back its plans by 90%, the high-value equipment never arrived. The total assessed value of the site fell catastrophically short of original projections. But the municipal bonds issued to pay for the land clearance and road widenings were not contingent on Foxconn's success. They were fixed, real debt contracts signed by the local government. The village had taken on fixed, long-term debt, backed by local taxpayer guarantees for a corporate commitment that was non-binding. While local tax collectors realized the long-term implications of this revenue gap, corporate management faced immediate pressure to demonstrate local employment numbers to keep their political options open. What followed was one of the strangest chapters in modern industrial history. An extensive media investigation by The Verge exposed the internal operations of the Wisconsin campus during the height of the hiring push, revealing an environment that felt more like a movie set than a tech campus. Former employees reported that the company hired hundreds of people into high-paying engineering, administrative, and operations roles to meet end-of-year headcount thresholds necessary for subsidy evaluations. However, because the factory floor was not operational and no clear manufacturing pipeline existed, many of these employees found themselves sitting in empty office rooms with no clear job duties. Former personnel described spending 8-hour shifts watching movies, playing video games, filling out meaningless spreadsheets, or walking through empty corridors to pass the time. Entire departments were formed without defined missions. In some cases, short-term contract workers were brought in right before evaluation deadlines, to pad the official employment roster, only to be let go once reporting periods closed. Millions of dollars were spent on payroll to maintain the optical illusion of a bustling industrial workplace, while the surrounding factory buildings sat quiet and empty. Before we reveal where the money went, hit subscribe to help us cover more billion-dollar infrastructure failures that vanished into thin air. As the years dragged on, the physical reality of the site became impossible to mask. The colossal 1 million square foot white structure was not humming with automated robotic arms, assembling high-definition displays. Instead, parts of the massive building were temporarily leased out or utilized as simple storage space. The state-of-the-art industrial shell had essentially been reduced to an oversized storage warehouse. Meanwhile, the surreal 100-foot glass sphere sat largely empty in the field, its interior networks operating at a tiny fraction of their planned capacity. Around these isolated structures, miles of 6-lane concrete roads carried almost no truck traffic. Oversized water lines capable of moving millions of gallons a day sat under pressure, servicing a facility that barely needed a fraction of that volume. Huge electrical substations built to handle massive heavy industrial loads hummed quietly next to empty fields. By 2021, the political landscape had completely shifted. Governor Tony Evers, who had campaigned against the original Foxconn deal, officially led negotiations to tear up the original 2017 agreement. The state and the company signed a drastically downsized contract, permanently ending the illusion of a $10 billion megafactory. Under the renegotiated 2021 terms, Foxconn's potential state tax credits were slashed from $2.8 billion down to $80 million. In exchange, the company's investment commitment was reduced from $10 billion to $672 million, and the mandatory job target was cut from 13,000 down to just 1,454 positions. The grand vision of an American LCD manufacturing capital was formally dead, replaced by a tiny fractional facility that barely registered on the state's industrial landscape. At this point, was this bad planning, political desperation, or a corporate bluff? Sound off in the comments. I read every single one. With the original contract officially gutted, the local municipality faced an urgent structural crisis. The village of Mount Pleasant was still stuck holding hundreds of millions of dollars in debt for land acquisition and infrastructure improvements, and the scaled-down Foxconn footprint was nowhere near large enough to generate the property tax revenue required to service those bonds. Officials desperately needed someone else to step in, buy the vacant land, and make use of the massive electrical and water utilities sitting beneath the dirt. That rescue attempt finally arrived between 2023 and 2026, when tech giant Microsoft stepped into the picture. Looking for vast tracts of land with pre-approved industrial zoning, massive power capacity, and direct access to water cooling infrastructure for the burgeoning artificial intelligence boom, Microsoft agreed to purchase hundreds of acres of the original Foxconn site from the local village. Microsoft announced plans to invest billions of dollars to build a series of massive enterprise data center campuses on the land that was once earmarked for television assembly lines. On paper, local officials celebrated the announcement as the ultimate redemption story. The land was finally being utilized, private capital was flowing into the region, and property tax payments from Microsoft would help cover the village's outstanding municipal bond debt. Share this video with anyone who still believes every major corporate factory announcement is guaranteed progress. When you look closely at the mechanics of the data center solution, the final trap of the Foxconn story snaps firmly shut. Microsoft's data centers are multi-billion-dollar physical structures, but they operate on a completely different economic engine than an assembly factory. Data centers are packed with expensive computer servers, specialized cooling systems, and high-voltage power distribution setups. They generate substantial property tax revenue, which helps the village pay off its infrastructure debt. However, data centers employ very few physical human workers relative to their geographic footprint and capital cost. Once construction is completed, a massive multi-billion-dollar data center campus typically requires only a few hundred technicians, security staff, and facilities engineers to keep the servers running. The original promise made to the people of Wisconsin was not just property tax revenue. It was 13,000 stable, high-paying assembly and engineering jobs designed to support middle-class families and sustain the local economy for generations. The people who lost their generational family farms, the residents whose homes were demolished under eminent domain, and the local businesses that restructured their operations were promised a thriving industrial hub full of thousands of workers arriving every morning. Instead, the community received high-security, fortress-like server warehouses filled with rows of humming computer racks. The custom infrastructure built with public debt, the widened highways, the massive water allocation permits, the specialized electric grid, is finally being used, but it is being used to power cloud computing servers rather than a domestic manufacturing renaissance. Look at that glass sphere one last time standing next to empty roads and high-security data center walls. Is it a beacon of modern technology or a monument to government overreach? Subscribe for our next urban investigation and tell me your final verdict in the comments below.